Hi there, this is Scott Rendall, and I'm here with Ivan Turner. Ivan, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous, Scott. How about yourself?
Fantastic, thanks. Now, Ivan, I've known you for a while, but why don't you tell the viewers who you are, what you do, why you do it, how long you've been in the industry, the whole nine yards.
Okay, good enough. Actually, I think we've known each other about 16 or 17 years.
Sounds about
If
right.
Yeah, if I remember right. Anyway, so my name is Ivan Turner. I've been involved in the disaster recovery industry for about 25 years. This is my second disaster company, and my company here in mid-Missouri is called Disaster Brigade USA. So not only do we serve mid-Missouri, but we also are just now getting into large loss work. So we do anticipate a lot of travel this winter. Of course, in March of this year, we'd spent about a month out in the Boston area working with another restorer on ice dams. They had 7 foot of snow out there, so you can imagine the work that was available. So that was fun, and we're looking forward to doing it again. In addition to Disaster Brigade USA, I also am the CEO and founder of Show Me Marketing Solutions. I've had that business for 9 or 10 years now. And then on top of that, I am the exclusive small business coach for North America Goldmore motor remediation products, and that just began last week. So I'm going to be helping Goldmore North America grow their footprint as far as members, as well as offering business growth services.
And what kind of products do they carry? Just
Motor remediation products. It's all done through the IICRC. They have I think they get 1 credit hour or 2, and I think it's a 2 or 3 day training. I'm not on the technical side. I'm on the business growth side of Goldmore, and we just struck that deal last week. So we're going to be hearing a lot more about Goldmore in the upcoming months.
cool. All right. So why don't we just launch into this? The whole reason I wanted you to speak today, well, part of the reason is you and I have had discussions in the past about where certain industry is going. We talked about the cleaning industry before. We talked about the rug industry, a little bit about the restoration. I'm really interested in how the restoration's shaken out. Where is it now? Where are we going with this? What's going on? Because I see a bunch of confusion, a bunch of weird things happening in the restoration field.
Okay, then I'm glad you asked that question. And I tell you, instead of sugarcoating it, I'll just tell your viewers the truth about the restoration industry as I see it from my perspective. Things have changed dramatically, and back in the day when I got into business, it was a lot easier to grow a restoration company in many ways than it is today. We had access to insurance adjusters, access to insurance agents, property managers. But today with the let me try to get this off my screen. Today's a little bit different, obviously, with the vendor programs. And I think it's probably because our industry is reaching maturity. And the way I always like to explain to my clients, for example, that the ones that fear the vendor programs, I'm not saying you have to fear them, but you certainly have to respect them if you're going to do business long term in this industry. But if you think about the automobile industry, used to be back when I was a kid, even when I was a young man in business, you could get somebody to work on your automobile for usually pay them off with a 12-pack of beer. I mean, they shade tree mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they were just as good as what a dealership's mechanics were. They had access to the same tools, etc. But fast forward that to today, and it's a rare that you'll see a shade tree mechanic, because now the automobile industry has upped the game so high that the tools that are required, the technology that's required, is just very difficult to attain. And a lot of that is parallel to the disaster restoration industry, in that today with pollution insurance, and there may be some legislation coming down the pipeline for the mold remediation side of the industry. It's just a lot tougher today. There's a lot more barriers certainly for startups, but there's also barriers for men and women who operate in this space that haven't quite figured out how to do business without vendor programs.
Okay. Great. Sorry about that. My phone just rang, and I thought I had it shut off, so hopefully you didn't hear that. But what about future disruptors then in the industry? You alluded to changes, possibly some mold remediation or mold guidelines coming or mold regulations, perhaps? What do you think? What are you thinking here with changes specifically?
Well, here's one of the biggest changes I think, and I think when independents especially understand this is powerful. There's something very powerful happening right now in business, in all businesses across all different sectors, service, retail, manufacturing. With the advent of the internet and social marketing, social media platforms, an independent today can actually position themselves to have the same appeal and connection with the community that they won't get otherwise, because if they're not on vendor programs, they won't get that. So if I was going to call for offer a disruption, I would say that's what it would be, is the social media and the way that people are buying today, buying habits.
Okay, now
and that's major, Scott, because a few years ago you had the playing field was more level, but today with let's make no mistake about it, the insurance industry is a tough, the restoration insurance industry is a tough field to play in, but it's just getting tougher and tougher, because make no mistake about it, the insurance companies would love to squeeze out all the independents if they could, but today independents have every opportunity to compete by going directly to the consumers, by going into different spaces like large loss or working commercial, the commercial sector. So I think that's what the big disruptor is that, and then of course on top of that you have deductibles now that are skyrocketing, going through the roof. That's going to make it a little bit easier, I think, for independents especially to target those customers.
What about an Uber style restoration company? Do you see that coming along?
Well, define what you mean by Uber.
Well, we just stayed at Airbnb with an Airbnb host, two of them this past weekend, and they're disrupting the hotel industry in a big way, and we're starting to see more and more of these pop-ups coming along the pipe. Uber is the cab company they hire independent people to drive people around, and it's an app basically. So do you see an app or some kind of disruption to the restoration industry through an app that people will be able to get on there and say, well, I need let's face it, restoration is one of those one and done things in the eyes of the consumer, and for the insurance companies, obviously they'd like to have a good partnership, but for the consumer, they don't know what to do. Like when we were going out of town this weekend, we didn't know where to stay. Let's look on, Airbnb. Is there going to be something like that in the restoration industry, do you think, where people get together into a network and perhaps work for one company or several, maybe a handful, that say we're the Uber for restoration?
Yeah, I can certainly see that happening, but I also, if I was going to make a prediction, I would say that you're probably going to see more specialized companies. Right now, if you look at disaster restoration businesses, and I know this because this is where I've played the same type of model for 25 years, and you offer general services to everybody. But just imagine if it was a business that specialized just in drying, and that's the only space that they played in, just in drying. And it's so much easier to brand one service than it is to brand several different services, and it's better to run campaigns for drying services. So I get what you're saying. I followed you on Facebook on your travels. It looked like you hit some really cool places. I would personally wouldn't stay at a bed and breakfast. However, that is a specialty market when you think about it. And it comes with more than just a bed. It comes with you get to hang out with the other people that are there. You get to make friends, etc., in a different type of environment than you would from one of the 1,000 different hotels that cities have. So that's what I see as being a change that may be coming forth.
Yeah, the crazy thing with Airbnb is you're staying at somebody's house. These people do not run an Airbnb, or they don't run a bed and breakfast specifically. They usually have a job or they work outside of their space, and they just open up their homes and basically tell you what it costs to get into their room, or if you want to rent the whole house, some places have that. So it's just kind of a crazy thing, and I thought it was really cool. And we're kind of, we like to be adventurous anyways, my wife and I, and thought, wow, that's kind of neat. Let's see what that's about. So we've we did the Airbnb thing. We're highly impressed. Now, obviously, there's probably horror stories out there too. And just like the restoration industry, I foresee, and you probably see it coming too, there's, with more of these things popping up, with more restoration companies popping up, we had a lot of contractors pop up over the past 5 or 6 years. Suddenly, they went from building decks and basement build-outs to becoming fire damage restorers and water damage experts, and so that was a kick in the pants for us. What about in your market?
Well, it's that way from coast to coast, Scott. I talk to people on a daily basis, different restorers of different sizes and of different models. But the truth is the industry is certainly large enough. I think last time I read was $200 billion industry, and that's just reported claims.
Wow.
And for any of the listeners that don't know about it, you can always check out ambest.com, and that's a service that actually compiles numbers on insurance companies. So you'll see how much your market is worth, which is a pretty powerful thing to know. But you're always going to have new guys jumping in. Here in our market, we have Roto-Rooters company, and they do great rootering, or whatever you want to call it. I've used it many times.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're in the restoration game. Two different types of businesses. As we all know, when you're in the service industry, when you take on too many different diversifications, that can sometimes come back to bite you. And I wish anyone well that gets into this industry, but I think the industry is large enough that especially if companies would try to focus a little bit more on their niche and on their specialty as opposed to being so broad, I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, we've got a lot of the basement waterproofer guys just popped out of nowhere, and yeah, they're doing pretty well. They're already in the basement to try to stop the water from coming in, and they get called out because the client, the insured, doesn't know who else to call, so they say, "Oh, basement waterproofing guy," and "Oh yeah, I'll clean it up for you too." So,
yeah, but it goes the other direction too. If you're in a house and you're doing the extraction and drying services, you've got 3 days at least that you can literally do all types of upsells if you choose.
Oh, sure.
Every time you want to offer a painting service, or if you want to do exterior work, so the sky's the limit. But we all deal in the service industry. So, and again, I guess where I'm different from a lot of people, I've always thought the market was large enough. The person that works the hardest, thinks the biggest, is always going to be the one that gets the biggest. That's just a fact of life. And I don't think that's so much based on the size of the market, but it's based on the model of the business. And even in today's time, there's still a lot of friction between independents and franchises. But at the end of the day, something that I think independents really need to understand is those franchise owners, they're businessmen and women too, and they have to go through the same struggles that we do. So I think there's room for everybody. So I'm excited about the future, and I still believe that there's never been a better time to enter this industry than right now. If someone comes in with the right type of plan, works hard at it, and stays focused with laser precision focus, I think anybody can do well in this industry. I really do.
Well, that kind of leads into the next question. What would you recommend somebody do if they're trying to break into the restoration industry? Their first baby steps, if you will.
Hey, baby steps. Well, aside from the technical training that needs to be achieved, you can't work in this industry anymore without IICRC certificates, those type of things. Those are a necessity. But once someone's got that training, I think what people who are just getting into the business, or people who are in it and are having a little time, maybe they're just struggling, is to learn and read and do as much as you can on branding, marketing, sales, tracking, and all those type of things, building personas, how to identify prospective customers, and focus on one or two spaces. And when I say spaces, Scott, it's just a term I use a lot, but I deal in the residential space, but I also deal in large loss space, and I deal locally here in mid-Missouri. I deal in the school space. That's an area that I target pretty heavily. So at some point in time, they're going to have some kind of a leak. And when you're talking about a school, 4-inch pipes and hundreds of toilets, sinks, gymnasium floors that have to be specially dried. But that's what I think someone really needs to know, is just have a good focus on what space you want to work in and potentially dominate. Because again, if you're all over the page, and I think we've all been there before. I certainly have. You may continue to grow your business, but you're really kind of lost because you're just waiting for the phone to ring instead of just focusing heavily on one particular area.
Okay. And after you've focused in on that one area, and I know each of the segments are obviously going to be marketed differently, but let's pick one. Let's say residential. How would one go about marketing towards the residential market?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, see, this was what I said at the onset, that there's so many opportunities now for businesses. Even a small business can actually have a large footprint on a community, and that's the residential folks that live in that community in some pretty inexpensive ways. Just like you had Stephen Hudebrink on. Here's a guy who's mastered social media, no doubt about it. I've retained a gentleman that works as a coach for me, for my business, and he helps my clients. But in his case, he's the one that has built a Ziegler web page from Facebook page from 0 to 2.5 million likes.
Wow.
So everybody that's on the internet or Facebook, you see those ads that scroll through all the time, the positive messaging. Yeah. But so the point is, it's not expensive in the grand scheme of things. The old days of sending brochures out, I haven't used a brochure in 3 years. Because the only reason why I don't use them today is because I finally stopped and started asking people, what do you think about our brochure? I don't know. Did you give me one? I don't know. People don't read brochures anymore. People think quickly and they want it now. So with the social media platforms that are out there, learning to master those. And again, I'd recommend hiring a coach. Steve would be the perfect guy to start with. I'm sure he's reasonable. So a company can actually literally position himself to look just as powerful as the big guy that's been around for 25 years. It just doesn't take a lot of time to do that either. You kind of follow what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was just wondering if there's, we got the social media part down, we got the website down. What do you think about knocking on doors for residential? Is that crazy talk, or? I
wouldn't do it, but the only reason why I wouldn't do it is because in the very beginning, my origins came out of the house cleaning business. So we used to do the doorknob hangers, and I got tired of telling people, call me, say, you need to get out here right now and take that thing off my door.
Oh, okay.
It's like, oh, you couldn't just take it off yourself? No way. No, I want you back. So I wouldn't discount anything. If someone thinks that's going to work for them, but I would certainly test it. I wouldn't just keep doing it week after week after week and then expecting and getting the same results, which might be zero. But if you're doing well at it, I'd certainly say continue on doing it. So I'm not against that. But one thing I think that oftentimes gets neglected from businessmen and women in this industry is networking. And when I say networking, I'm talking about with the influencers in the community. If I did a survey, I'd probably just guess probably 20% of all restoration contractors serve on any type of board of directors or are involved in some community functions. And that's a big mistake, because the quickest way to build in your community is actually to go through the influencers. Every community has them, through your chamber of commerce, and then through, again, serving on different boards and committees. And currently I serve on 2 boards and a couple associations and a couple committees, but by and large, through the years, that's where the majority of my business has come from.
Interesting.
And it's not going to a meeting with the wrong thought, because I serve on the boards that mean something to me. I support the Boys and Girls Club, for example, and I'm on their board, but I care about the kids. So it has to be something that's genuine, that you're really passionate about, and that shows when you're sitting around every month with all these heavy hitters or these influencers. And that's a good way to grow a business, because most restoration guys just simply won't do it, and probably out of fear.
Would you disagree with this statement? The only way that you can get lots of restoration work is if you work through the insurance companies.
I would disagree with that.
Because that's a complete departure from even a few years ago then.
Right. I still market to insurance companies. Make sure we're clear on that. I market to insurance companies, but not in the same level that I did before. Again, because the insurers, the top guys, have started smacking the hands and sending out mandates to these agents, producers, and even adjusters, telling them, do not deal with anybody outside of our vendor network. And that's for consistency purposes. And again, if I was an insurance company, I would have a right to do whatever I felt was good for my company and my shareholders. So I don't begrudge them for their stance. But by the same token, there's still agents out there. It's that 80-20 rule. There's still agents out there that are happy to refer somebody who has their best interest or the best interest of their insureds in mind. That's the truth. But I'll tell you, Scott. Can I share a real quick story with you?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Back in the day, what I was doing, we marketed 60 miles, which was 14 counties, and I had a total of about 225 insurance agencies that I visited monthly. Everybody got touched once a month by an impact with me, and then I'd drop off the donut boxes, cookies, pizzas, sometimes the works, cups, calendars, and it was working really well for me. But at one point, I realized, well, there's a lot of these folks that just aren't referring me, and I've been in and out of their office for two years now on a monthly basis. So there's one gentleman, and actually we became friends. His name is Bob. He's in Columbia, Missouri. So every month, first week of every month, I'd pick the day, I'd go visit his office and all the other agents in that community. So after 2 years of doing this with no referrals from him, I went into his office. He says, "Hey, Ivan, how are you?" I said, "Hey, good, Bob. How you doing?" And he said, "Good." And I brought him some donuts. And I said, I've got a question I need to ask you, Bob. I said, just really, it's aching at me. He said, "What's the question?" I said, "I've been visiting you for 2 years now. Every month," I said, "I bring in cookies. I bring in donuts, coffee mugs." In fact, on his wall in the back of his office, there's about 10 of my coffee mugs, and my calendar on his desk, and ink pens on his cup holder. So I said, "I just got to ask, why have you not sent me a single referral?" He said, "Oh my God, I got to tell you something." He said, "I wish you would have told me. I love your donuts, by the way, and your cookies." He said, "I don't sell property and casualty. All I sell is life insurance." Yeah, that's what I said. Huh?
Oh, man.
I said, "Well, why?" I said, "Bob, why didn't you tell me that?" So he said, "Well, you never asked."
Yeah.
He said, "You never asked." So anyway, the thing is, once I learned how to focus on the 20% rule and to find the agents that definitely were receptive to building a relationship, I went after those and kind of put the other ones on a drip system where they'd just get postcards every month. In fact, Bob continued, the guy I was just telling you about, he continued to get postcards for a year after that because I had him on my list and was just too lazy to take them off. But, so no, there are the insurance industry is still vital to growing a restoration business. But being on vendor programs, I've been on many through the years, and today I have no interest in being on vendor programs. My business is growing not nearly as fast as I'd like it to, but I'm never satisfied with my numbers. But business is doing good, and we're in a growth mode. Momentum's just starting to go. But like I said, I have no interest in being on a vendor program whatsoever. Just too much administrative work, and it just takes the fun out of the game. And if you can't do a job where you can have some fun, then you're probably in the wrong line of work. And the insurance community, sometimes with the vendor programs, guys that chase them over and over, or once they get on them, it really takes the enjoyment out of delivering a good quality service.
Yeah, it seems like it takes the creativity out too. You're just stuck in this little loop with them. Nowhere to go but inside the loop. You can go anywhere you want as long as you're inside that box.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one other real quick story. Unless your business is large enough to sustain a hit here and there, it can be tough. And luckily, my previous business, which you're very familiar with, I sold that through a divorce to my ex-partner, and they're doing well, thankfully. But I had lost a vendor. I was a vendor for a national company, and it brought in a lot of money, multiple six figures, but times several hundred. And the day I lost them, it's like, oh my gosh. It's like, what am I gonna do? I felt like I should, jump off climb the girders on the Missouri River Bridge and jump. So it's like, well, how am I going to survive? Then I realized it's all part of the game. I just knew when I started my new business, I just didn't want to have that kind of pain again and being pressured to make certain decisions and follow their rules, because I was an entrepreneur, I still am, and I like to make my own rules and follow my own rules and let the customer be the judge of how well I did at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Not the insurance company.
Great. So what can you tell us about marketing directly to the consumer besides the social media, besides, talking to the adjusters, or anything else that we're missing when we're trying to hit the consumer? Do you speak to big, large groups of people, and if so, how do you find them? Consumers, like insured, not necessarily insurance companies, but how do you find that end consumer and make a connection with them if they've never heard of you before? Let's say they don't use Facebook. Let's say they haven't seen your trucks. What else can you do?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do. I have a postcard campaign, and it's still pretty aggressive. I do not use the one that's really popular now, which is EDDM, every door direct mail. I don't do that. I should, because I'd save some money. But I do have a postcard program that I use in certain neighborhoods, because those are just the neighborhoods I've always had good luck with. And they're homes of the size I know I'm not going to have any problems with the bantering back and forth about the deductible, that type of thing. But those are some of the best ways. I've done billboards. I ran a really heavy billboard campaign early this year. And then I also ran a heavy radio campaign this year. But like I mentioned at the beginning, everything always has to be tested. And it's got to be tested carefully. And after I did all my testing, I realized, well, it's just not getting the ROI that I'd like for it to have. So I just stopped that. I'm just going back to the old-fashioned belly to belly. Getting to shake as many hands as I can, give out as many business cards as I can, and I've got a nice wrap on my vehicle. For those of you out there that don't believe in wraps, I'm telling you, wraps work. They truly, I don't think that people are going to come up, and I wouldn't put a business card holder on my side of my truck because I'd be afraid they'd scratch my wrap. but wraps work. They really do, and that's a good way. 24/7 as you're going down the road, so it's a moving billboard, and people do take notice of that. So those are some of the ways that it can be built. But, the thing with one of the reasons I do need to say that one of the reasons why I had put so much money into the early part of this year, the first 2 quarters, on radio, billboard, and in full-page magazine ads, was because the year before I just got in on the tail end of it. It was one of the worst winters that Missouri has had in years. It was bad. And I wasn't fully ramped up to start handling the work anyway, so I'm glad I didn't, I guess, get too busy. But the Farmer's Almanac said that this year was going to be worse than the year before. So I'm not a gambling man, Scott, and you know that. So, but I made the one mistake I've never made before, and that's read the Farmer's Almanac.
Yeah.
So I bet the farm on this campaign I had with the full billboards, radio ads, magazine ads. I bet the farm on it. So anyway, when it comes time, it's December. I'm waiting for it to get cold out. It's like 70 degrees in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
January comes around. I think the coldest day we have was like 36. Then February, it's like, oh my God. I'm checking my phone to make sure my phone's connected, right?
Yeah.
Maybe people are trying to call me, but anyway, there just wasn't a good freeze. So that's how I ended up going out to the Boston area for a month, was because Missouri was just a horrible winter. I shouldn't say horrible for us, but not for homeowners, obviously. But anyway, did that answer your question on that long detail?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned earlier about IICRC and you need to get trained and educated. What other courses? Is there anything outside of what we know in our industry that we should be trained on to get into the restoration industry? Should we go to? Yeah. Should we get a? How about an education in the insured space? Is there any merit to that?
No. That's the most boring industry.
I agree.
No, actually, I got to tell you, I've hosted a lot of classes, as you know. I built my facility was pretty large. I had a 1,000 square foot training room, so that's one of the ways that I built my business was through teaching insurance agents and adjusters and property managers, those type of things. But I don't know that it would do any good to go to any insurance type classes, but I do know it's important to understand the vernacular that they speak. I'll give you a couple of examples. Every industry has its own terms that they use, vernacular.
Sure. And
like we say, dehumidifier, category 1, category 2, those type of things. But I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make when they call on the insurance community, whether it's a claims representative or if it's a producer, and actually a producer is the agent, they don't understand the language. So when they go and knock on the door, do that code call, and they're talking to the girl at the front desk, the gatekeeper, who's just as important as the producer, that's the person you should really be showing the most respect to. They start talking, they'll say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and if you get any floods, let me know. Or you guys had any floods? Well, first of all, insurance producers hate us, and not in a bad way. I mean, because if they have a claim, that hurts their profit ratios.
Sure.
It's the way it's done. So they don't like us as an industry, but they don't hate us. I didn't mean, you knew what I meant, I guess.
Yeah.
But so learning their language that they speak, I think will help get you through the gatekeeper better. Anytime I've ever called on producers, and I always try to use terms like, does this policy have ALE, additional living expense? I say peril. I don't say, well, this was awarded. I said, this is a water peril. I just do that, and that's how I think I probably best built my relationships with the insurance community, was by respecting them enough to at least learn about what it's like being an agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Where did you get that education?
Library.
Just a library. Okay, I was going to say it's.
When
I first started talking with you, I remember you were throwing out terms like HO, was it HO1, HO3, HO5, and I was like, okay, that's cool, but help me out. Where did you get that stuff from? How did you know?
Well, actually, one of the ways I actually learned it is I had at one time I interviewed a whole boatload of insurance agents, which, like I said, they're really producers is their name, agents and adjusters. I had interviewed several of them, put it into my very first program that I wrote, which was how to market to insurance agents and adjusters. And it was a lot of learning. There were a lot of things about their industry that I had absolutely no idea about, which was beneficial to me, because then when I go out to the job site and I'm dealing with one of their clients, I can be that bridge between the client and the insured, because I know their language enough, and then I know my language. So I kind of serve, like I said, I call it being the bridge to keep the producer looking good, and at the same time being able to answer some basic questions that the insured, the homeowner, will have. Obviously, it's illegal for us to interpret policy, that type of thing, but I can certainly make suggestions based on best practices and based on the knowledge that I have picked up through my years in service with the insurance community.
Okay, so it just takes knowing the right people and speaking with them, get to know them.
Yeah, I get to know them, but I'll tell you, like I said, I still have a lot of agent friends. I still market to agents, and I spend a lot of time on golf courses and pheasant hunts with them. So I've gotten to know them about as close as what you'll get to know about a friend. And these I'm talking about real friends. So I've learned what they don't like about restoration contractors or salespeople, reps coming in, is they despise when someone comes in and just gets in their face and then just starts talking. So here's some brochures. Hey, we did so-and-so fire. We got 1,500 of these blue fans. An insurance producer, and certainly the gatekeeper and the adjuster for that matter too, absolutely care nothing about you. What they care about is themselves. We're all like that.
Sure.
So you've had it happen to you before, Scott, where someone just walks in unannounced and starts trying to do a sales pitch, right? That's a bad thing, but it's amazing how many restorers are still doing that today, or don't even have the respect to dress the part when they walk into a producer's office. I will still to this day, and I've had salespeople all through the years, when I walk into a producer's office, I'm probably going to be at least in a sports coat. They can be in their company shirt that says State Farm, and that's fine, but I'm still going to show the respect, and that's just the way I've always looked at it. And through my interviewing and relationship building through the years with agents and adjusters, and when they were asked that question, what do you think about when someone comes in? Do you have dislikes about the way they dress? That 80% will say, oh, no, I don't care. But that 80% is also the 80% that's sitting behind their desk and have got a coffee stain on their shirt. Their place, their office smells like smoke, or they're playing at Pong, eating Cheetos and drinking Mountain Dew, right? Yeah. So, but that 20%, those are the ones who will, in fact, position somebody that they realize has respect for their industry and for their office.
All right, very good.
I'll step off the soapbox now.
No, I like that. That's super helpful. I've ran into my share of the 80-20 too, so know exactly where you're coming from. What about, can you share any crazy stories with us? You always have a really funny story for me whenever we speak. So, you have any crazy stuff that's rattling around you want to get out there? Insurance related or restoration related?
Yeah, I do have a couple. Give me just a second. I've got to get into character here. What was the one, Deb? Oh, no, I already took that one. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll tell you one. A few years ago, an independent adjuster that I worked with on a regular basis, he called me up and said, and it was one of those deals, he sent me a boatload of work. So when he would say, can you get out there? I wasn't going to ever, and we were friends, but I still wasn't going to question and say, well, it has 3 or 4 o'clock work. Usually it meant, how fast are you going to be there? So he wanted me there at the same time as him. So we'd scope the loss together. So there's this farm property, farm home, and it was way out in the woods. This gentleman is a doctor, very well known here in mid-Missouri. He has about 500 acres. And this was like a hunting lodge structure, but he didn't hunt. But this guy was very well known. He's a reader, an author, and a pilot. I think he was an airline pilot one time. This guy's multi-talented. Anyway, I'm trying to set the picture in the mind here. So it was the dead of winter, and we had to go down through this long gravel road lane to get to the property. They'd had a fire, something electrical up in the attic had caught on fire. Fire department came out, put the fire out, and walked into this home, and it was just breathtaking. This guy had the most expensive rugs that you could possibly imagine. He had art. He was an art collector. And this place is out in the middle. And of course, he had a security system, but this place was out in the middle of nowhere. And when you walk in, you said, oh my God, this guy must be somebody, because this stuff is from all over the world. And books. The guy had a library like I've never seen in a property before. So I knew he was well read. So, taxidermy too. So anyway, I knew that this was going to be an important job. So the adjuster I was with, he said, we got to handle this one carefully. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, this guy's powerful. Hadn't even met the guy. So anyway, got the job, and I told the adjuster, I said, we'll be out here first thing in the morning, light, when it gets light. We'll be out here first thing in the morning, set the generator up and go in and start doing some inventory and some light cleaning just to make it a little more presentable. Because it's heavy smoke damage, but fire didn't do much except up in the attic. So anyway, I go out there next morning with my crew, and I'm out there about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it snowed even more during the night. I get all the way up the lane, go around this corner. House is gone. Yeah, nothing there but a little pile of smoldering rubble.
What?
Yeah. A little smoldering rubble.
Oh my
The
gosh.
fire department must have been a hot amber up there that they missed. I'm sure they weren't using FLIR because it's volunteer fire department. But the house is burnt to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, my first thing I'm thinking to myself is, gosh, what'd I do? I have to be careful because I had to be careful. I have to make sure I've got an alibi for last night so they don't think we're out here cleaning last night. I caught the place on fire.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in my truck. I'm making some calls. So I called the adjuster. I said, I've got some good news and bad news. And I said, the good news, I said, I did make it out here. I said, but the bad news is the house is burnt to the ground. And he said, you want to call him or you want me to? I said, you call that guy. I'm not calling him. That was kind of a bizarre
That's
story.
crazy.
But, restoration field, clean art restoration. There's so many crazy stories. The guy could write a book about them, no doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's been a lot of fun stories too. I've had a great deal of fun. It's probably been the best ride of my life this last 25 years. Tough times too, but for anybody that's listening to this, I just want to say again that anybody can do well in this industry. You really can. But one thing you've got to always think about, there's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be those negative people who tell you, oh, you can't work in this industry because there's vendor programs, or because now everybody's getting into, like we talked about earlier, Scott. Mm-hmm. That's not true. You can make it. Anybody can make it in this industry, because if I can, I know for a fact anybody can. But it just takes some skill, best practice skills, education, and a burning desire to win. But this is, even with all the horror stories and even with all the changes this industry has gone through these last 8 or 10 years, it's still one of the funnest, best industries I think that entrepreneur can take the endeavor and jump in.
Awesome. Well, I know that you run your newest company is called Disaster Brigade, so why don't you tell us about what that's all about? Who is it for? What's it designed for? What do you do?
Okay, awesome. I'm glad you asked that question. Okay, Disaster Brigade USA is a full-service business. We offer fire mode, water damage, smoke removal, and even forensic restoration, another term for trauma cleaning. We just call it forensic restoration. A little softer to say. The business, when it was first started, and it's still the same intent, we're going to, at some point in time, try to bring veterans, able-bodied and disabled alike, offer them an opportunity as one of our members, not a franchise, but a simple membership, to where for a certain amount of fee they get trained, 5-day training here in Jeff City, Missouri, heavy-duty training, and then send them back to their respective towns, communities, to grow their businesses. Because, as you know, as a veteran, we're both veterans, so as a veteran, you're accustomed to hurry up and wait. And that's really what the restoration industry is, a lot of hurry up and wait. So that's what the purpose for founding Disaster Brigade was, and also to give back to some causes that mean a great deal to us. So on every job that our company does from day one, we give up to $500 away to Operation Give Back and Wounded Warriors. And how that works is homeowners have a deductible. It's rare that you won't have a deductible involved. But what we do is, if a customer has a $1,000 deductible, for example, we just tell them right from the beginning, and we've not had one person yet say no. In fact, some of them have even wanted to pay more. But we say, here's what how our program works. If you write a check for $250 to Operation Give Back, and by the way, those are men and women that lost limbs during these, call them what they are, they're wars, but let's say conflicts now, but these kids have lost their limbs. So the customer writes a check for $250 and we match it. So in essence, they're only paying $500 on the $1,000 deductible. We give that money to those causes to help them, to help those groups help our vets.
I see. Very good. And where are you going with this? Is this going to be a nationwide, worldwide endeavor? What's your plan with this?
Our plan is to be in 50 states. But I'm a little bit behind the curve right now because I've got so much going on, but that's just the way I've always lived. So it will happen. We'd like to have membership in all 50 states. And it's not necessarily just for veterans either. We have been in talks with non-veterans getting in also, as long as they do the same thing, follow the same model that has always worked well for me for 25 years, and as long as they're also willing to support the groups that I'm sort of affiliated with. So we do want to have a nationwide footprint at some point in time.
Very good. Cool. Well, Ivan, anything else we should discuss today? Or I know my wife's about ready to come home, but that's fine. I told her, be quiet when you come in. We're having a little chat here. So.
Well, if you come in, I'd say hi to Sonny.
Yeah.
You've got a wonderful wife, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then when you get together one of these days, and I love what you're doing with this program. I think it's excellent. So anytime you can help people out, and I just hope that our talk tonight, I hope maybe something I said will help somebody out.
Well, it's helped me already, so that's one of hopefully millions. You
forgot more than I've ever.
Oh no, sir, absolutely not.
Yeah. So, and then I would just, like I said, I'm passionate about this essentially. I guess it bothers me. I just want to end with this. So, it really bothers me because I don't know if you're on LinkedIn a lot, but I'm on there a lot, and even Facebook. It's constantly about the vendor programs. People have to learn to adapt. It's one of those things. That's what it's all about, is adapting, and things aren't going to change on that end. I don't think the vendor program is going to change, but I think right now, I'll say it one more time, this is my prediction, is companies that embrace the way people are buying today through the social media, the internet, all that type of thing, and white papers, that's another thing a company could do. In fact, I'm working finally getting mine finished up, a white paper that has to do with water damage, and it's going to be mainly for my community, but it'll help build presence. And the more people read about a company or the leader of the company, the more they start believing that person or that company is superior to others. And that's just the truth.
Yeah.
And I've always done well with press releases. Those are free. Newspapers are starving for good content that has to do with their community. I'm not talking about a sales pitch, because any editor will see right through that and they'll never get it published. But anytime a business, small or large, can offer up some good advice, and it doesn't even have to. It doesn't even have to be something that's happening in that community. But for example, someone in South Florida could be writing a story or a press release about the folks are getting hammered in Texas right now. So what happens is, when that goes into the paper, it's just a community-related press release that will help build that person's status and expertise level. And then what happens after that is the newspaper and television stations, radio stations will all begin to look for that one person as the source for good information when events do happen. The
restoration influencer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. All right, Ivan, how does somebody get in touch with you?
They do go through my website, and I'm embarrassed to say this right now because we just spent an hour talking about social media and web platforms. I'm having a problem with GoDaddy right now. GoDaddy went away on me.
Went daddy.
It should be back tomorrow, hopefully. But my websites are this: showmemarketingsolutions.com. That's ShowmeSolutions.com. Show me is in the show me state. And then disasterbrigadeusa.com. And my phone numbers are 573-291-0234. And our national toll-free number is 1-844-291-0234. And then my personal email is, I think I already said, ivanturner61@yahoo.com.
Awesome, Ivan. Appreciate it, man. As always, we'll talk after the show here, and thanks again. I know this will help many, many people. I've been really looking forward to this one.
And if it does help anybody, I ask that they pay it forward to somebody else. That's all I ask.
Cool. Thanks again.
Scott, we'll see you.
See ya.